There was once a village and a city. They bordered each other, high walls masking knowledge of the other. The villagers were farmers and were happy to live in poverty to help their god. They delivered food to ancient pedestals and were pleased when God took their food away, when their sacrifices were accepted. The city, on the other hand, well, their god gave them food, placing it on similar pedestals at the borders of the urban sprawl. They took the food graciously, knowing it was a sign their god was pleased with their work. They knew as long as they kept working away, they would be given a place in the world by their forever gracious deity. This was the whole story, at least each side. They were completely ignorant of the presence of the other, what was behind the wall, and of course of the pipeline that acted as both of their gods. The pipeline that funneled the village's food to the city, giving purpose to all of the lives of the citizens in our little experiment. Each side was happy with what they had, and even while being incredibly unequal in theory, could you really say one side was happier, or better off, or more developed than the other?
The airport? The city?
The day is September 2nd, 1945. It has been 27 days since hundreds of thousands were vaporized or set on a cruel, irreversible path to death. The destruction of the atomic bombs dropped on Japan made evident the possibility of worldwide, total, mutual annihilation. Worldwide celebrations ensued. Happiness levels among citizens in the Allied countries skyrocketed to new heights. The war was over. Sea level rise has forced coastal cities worldwide to construct massive flood barriers and seawalls. Beaches all around the world have to be manually relocated inland or are forced back and shrunk by the ocean waves. Plastic waste litters the shores despite cleaning efforts. The human population exceeds 10 billion, but AI entities may constitute a much larger body. After all, the singularity, the point where general AIs became smarter than humans, occurred 16 years ago. The country with the largest population in the system is completely virtual. Mining in the asteroid belt is relatively commonplace, carried out by simple automations or AIs willing to do the task. While no ground settlements rely on these resources quite yet, these mining operations make deep space automated construction possible and provide rare, expensive resources at a cheaper price tag. Political systems all across the world are changing rapidly with the influx of new technology and materials from space, and the lower class is raised up by the ability for AIs to automate almost any task. Average wealth and quality of life increases exponentially across the Earth, and universal basic income is gaining popularity among the richest countries. Raw computing power is millions of times larger than in 2021, and silicon-based chips are becoming less and less common, being replaced by superior materials such as graphene, carbon nanotubes, phosphorine, and whale fermion hardware. Quantum computing is commonplace. The Haven Mars shuttle departs Earth in January. It transfers a few hundred passengers to the first few permanent Mars colonies, taking around 7 months to complete the journey. It departs every 26 months at the ideal transfer windows between Earth and Mars. More wealthy or important passengers take private spacecraft that have enough fuel to take a less efficient, but faster and more flexible transfer route. The birthplace of many of these interplanetary craft is our moon. 1947, the world is playing a game with itself. Children enraptured in a fight between little figurines, surrounded by a city of carefully stacked blocks, avoiding the thought that any child could, with a few swings of the arm or leg, destroy the intricate illusion that envelops them. The Cold War has just begun. Two superpowers locked in an ideological standstill, neither able to fight without causing the apocalypse. Widespread propaganda with decades-long impact, wars being egged on, competitions being fought. Out of this quiet chaos, the space race emerged. Humanity gained the ability to leave the fragile egg of a planet it was born onto, to look down upon its struggles. The world stared up in awe at the cosmos, newly aware of the vast riches of the beyond. But why leave our little blue ball? After all, every technology has its downfalls. With nuclear research, we gain the ability to produce massive amounts of clean power, cure certain cancers, and set out on the path towards replicating the fusion inside our star. But we lost some of our resilience along the way. With a few decisions, human life on the planet could be replaced by an irradiated wasteland. With the advent of computers, we multiplied our efficiency millions of times, being able to solve problems never thought solvable before. But we are sacrificing our privacy and independence bit by bit, becoming completely reliant on our creation. In 1943, a shutdown of computer infrastructure worldwide would cost nothing. They didn't exist yet. But in 2021, this would cost tens of trillions of dollars and cause millions of deaths worldwide. And with space travel, our population will inevitably grow too large to sustain on our one little planet. Our expansion would be irreversible and exponential. We would depend on deep space mining for our resources, on automated farms for our food, and on life support systems to keep entire planetary populations alive. Our current way of life would never again be possible without a massive catastrophe and the billions of deaths that would result from it. Sure, lifespan would likely improve, but is that worth the cost? Maybe there's a better way to judge a technology. How happy does technology make people anyway? The moon has been permanently occupied by humanity since 2035. Most of its surface still sits empty, but Artemis City is a tiny pinprick in the dark, just visible from Earth on a new moon. It's not much of a human city, with a visiting population of only a few thousand and no permanent residents, but it is filled with automations. Artemis City is the birthplace of our ships, a dock on the border of the beyond. Its low gravity makes it ideal for the construction of massive vessels. Earth-Moon cruise lines, consumer spacecraft for the wealthy, long-distance travelers like the Haven, they all start here. Automated mining stations, biodomes, and power plants sprawl out from the city. Almost all of the production in Artemis is fueled purely by the gracious moon itself, with any lack in rare resources being fulfilled by asteroid mining endeavors. Luna was also the site of the first space elevators, made easier to construct because of the low gravity and lack of atmosphere. These first ropes to the heavens paved the way for Earth's space elevator, now vital for bringing passengers to and from Earth-Moon transfer ships, and sometimes even to the final destination of Mars. The most powerful radio telescope ever built is also situated on Luna's surface, housed in a large, smoothed-off crater with an array of delicate sensory equipment perched above, like a spider on a single thin, fragile strand. It can peer far into the cosmos without pesky atmospheric distortion, and is able to produce extremely detailed images of distant phenomena, like faraway galaxies and black holes. So let's look at our technology through the lens of happiness. Recent research on happiness over time, done by automatically skimming through millions of books for positive keywords, shows some interesting information that lines up with major historical events. Wars and economic crashes cause decreases in happiness and boosts in happiness when they are over, as seen with World War II. Sudden change allows people to compare their current lives to their previous lives easily, allowing them to feel happy or sad about that change. But overall happiness always seems to, at least from this research, stabilize. This concept is known as the hedonic treadmill, the idea that humans always adjust to their base level of happiness without change. So then, what is all of our work for if humans were just as happy in the 1800s as today? What are we accomplishing? Are we just expanding for the sake of expanding, a cancer of the universe? Well, maybe, but a few more things affect happiness long term. The most major is equality. Because people base their happiness on comparing their experiences to those of the people around them, people can be more happy if they feel they are living the best life available. Like in the village and the city, both sides were ignorant of the other and had, at least hypothetically, a high degree of equality among their respective citizens, leading to each side feeling the same despite having different living conditions. So, does technology maximize our equality? Well, it certainly has the potential to. Technology is the only way to truly increase overall material wealth. No amounts of money or goods circulation will make the average person richer. So, as long as the wealth technology produces is distributed equally, then it will increase equality. But if future resources go straight into a market system like that of the US today, inequality will likely persist, even while the average person is better off. Here's another thing to consider. Perceived positive change makes people happy for the short term. But if this change is exponential, like technological progress today, it can cause a permanent rise in happiness, as this short-term happiness benefit never goes away. At least in theory. But why are we even trying to focus on happiness anyway? If that's our goal, shouldn't we just alter our genetics to make us happy, or inject dopamine directly into our brains? Happiness as a metric, as something we should maximize, doesn't really hold up to scrutiny. Is a simulated paradise where we are physically injected with joy really the end goal of humanity? So what about maximizing equality? Well, this might start off well, but where do we stop? Everyone being exact clones of each other would certainly increase equality, but most would agree individuality is important. And once we reach whatever threshold we impose upon ourselves, what's next? What about maximizing expansion? Is growing really a way to improve our lives, or does it just have the perceived effect of doing so? In the end, what we are here for, what we should accomplish in the future, is a subjective question. There is no objective best way to continue our species. Permanent occupation of the Red Planet began in 2040, just a few years after that of Luna. Since then, a few relatively small ground bases have been made, each with a few hundred residents that cycle to and from the planet. Terraforming research is the main purpose of these outposts, as well as liquid fuel production for the ships going back to Earth or farther into the solar system. Like on Luna, most of the activities on Mars are automated by robotics and AIs. The Haven arrives at Mars in October, 7 months after refueling at Luna. It docks at Phobos, the planet's largest moon, where a refueling and passenger transfer station was built. Because of the artificial gravity rings on the Haven, these passengers aren't adapted to the low gravity of Phobos and Mars, so before departing they spend another 24 hours on the Haven, with the outer ring gradually slowing. The inner crew wing slows much faster in only 4 hours, allowing the gravity-trained staff to assist with refueling the ship and unloading cargo for the passengers in advance. From here, the passengers are loaded onto separate shuttles, which then descend to various polar and equatorial bases on the Martian surface. Because of the 6 to 44 minute delay of communication between Earth and Mars, these bases are very isolated. Even when the planets are at the closest, live communication between them is not possible. Because of this, over the years, the temporary residents of Mars have begun slowly developing their own accent, culture, and governing style. Mars is a new start for humanity, a chance to begin fresh without the thousands of years of history and customs that plague our home planet. Social systems and technology developed on Mars will, with certainty, spread backwards to Earth and make both planets better. Humanity is starting to experience the first benefits from being multiplanetary. When it comes down to it, we are, well, just here. There isn't an objective meaning of life. There can't be any argument for or against progress without choosing a subjective metric to focus on, to maximize. My personal subjective metric is choice. Anyone should be able to choose their own lifestyle freely, and if that involves injecting dopamine into their brains, so be it. Different planets in the galaxy would have different lifestyles, from hunter-gatherers to simulated realities. Collection of all resources would be automated, and those resources would be available for all to use. You could make any choice so long as it doesn't take away from others' ability to make choices. So, this is why I believe we should continue along our path of technological progress. It will let us make more choices on how and where we want to live. If a future like the one I described, set in 2061, seems exciting, like a place you would want to live in, explore, be on the frontier, you probably want to keep advancing technology as well. But if it sounds like a place you would despise, technological progress still may help you have a place where that progress isn't forced upon you anymore. A fresh new planet to start over on, to do it right. Because no matter who you are, I believe what we've done so far, it's all worth it. I've been 2LNL. Hey, thank you for watching this episode of We Us Ours. If you liked it, consider subscribing, as it really helps me out and promotes content like this to you on YouTube. It's It's completely free and is very helpful in helping me know how many people like my videos, as well as promoting my content in the YouTube algorithm. If you want to support me more, I also have a Patreon where you can get access to these documentaries early. This one went up like a few days earlier on Patreon than here on YouTube, and you'll also get access to all of my documentary soundtracks, as well as any I make in the future. For the highest tier, you can also get some Blender procedural textures that I use to make scenes like this, as well as all the other scenes in my documentaries. I have almost every texture I use on there, as long as it's created by me and procedural, on my Patreon. Thank you for watching, and now to the credits.